After making The Dogs of War, John Irvin decided to tell a ghost story. This movie is also based on a book, and it stars 4 Hollywood veterans with famous names. Fred Astaire, Melvin Douglas, John Houseman, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. star as 4 wealthy old friends whose favorite hobby is sitting together and telling scary tales to each other. Many years ago they were all complicit in a terrible deed, and they've been haunted by their involvement ever since. And Ghost Story follows a spirit of vengeance coming back to claim the guilty after all these years. The movie also stars Craig Wasson as one of the men's sons, who's ultimately the protagonist trying to figure out the curse. Horror movies have never really been my thing, but this one feels like a pretty standard example. The shadows and music create scenes of suspense. The withered faces of the guilty contort into expressions of terror, and the grisly appearance of the ghost is very effective at times. Of course, the film deals with guilt, though there's also the hint of a theme surrounding male power through sexual prowess. Of course, like any adaptation of a book, the movie simplifies the story, and while I haven't read the book, I can imagine where some of the cuts were made. Ghost Story was the last feature film for 3 of its big stars. Astaire, Douglas, and Fairbanks all had very long and rich careers, as did John Houseman, and to see them all together in this film is a treat for any fan of old Hollywood. Just like Dogs of War, however, Ghost Story is a product of its time. Most of the 80s effects look ridiculous by our standards, and I imagine most people nowadays would laugh at this movie rather than actually be scared. But I've got to be honest, this still has a few moments that made me flinch. Mostly because of the jump scares, but hey, they still work. Ghost Story is not a great film, nor is it even that good of a film, but it's definitely got some merit. The actors are certainly capable of holding their own despite the silliness of the story, and at the very least it's enjoyably over the top. The film was John Irvin's second feature, and while it did make a decent amount of money, it was given very mixed reviews even then. While Dogs of War and Ghost Story had been American productions, the next 2 films that John Irvin worked on were back in his home country of England, focusing on a British audience. Those 2 films were Champions and Turtle Diary.